With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker this morning from Pacesetter Tax. Caleb Cardon received his bachelor's degree from the University of Oregon and went on to receive a graduate degree from the University of Utah, actually, as a PhD. After graduate school, he joined a small tax firm of 2 and worked to grow the firm into a regional firm with more than 30 employees. Working to grow the EA firm, provided many insights that have dovetailed into his current position as Director of Development at Pacesetter Tax. Caleb has spent his career working at the interface of technology and tax. He says he stays busy hiking, camping, snowboarding, and in the Salt Lake area with his wife and 4 boys. So I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit more, but the product is built by folks that understand what enrolled agents do, and it's about helping you to manage your practice. Morning, Caleb.
All right.
You gonna be up here, or?
I'll just walk around. I think I have a mic. Is that working? Everybody can hear me? Okay. Thank you, David, for that introduction that I wrote. I appreciate that. Very kind words. So I just want to thank Aaron and David for the opportunity to come and speak with you guys for a few minutes this morning about a few things that we're working on that stemmed out of our office. I'll be honest with you, 7 a.m. is the earliest I've ever given a talk. So kudos to you for being here. I assume that most of you must be staying after this conference or came before to enjoy Las Vegas, because otherwise you wouldn't be here at 7 a.m. By show of hands, how many people are staying after the conference a few days? Okay, great. That's what I call the mullet of vacations, right? You have the business up front, and then you get the party afterwards. So hopefully you guys enjoy Las Vegas after this, the conference ends. But it's been a great conference so far. I've really enjoyed the topics and the speakers. They've all been great. Little trivia fact, AJ's from Iowa. And I am also from Iowa, so it's a small world. Iowa's a great place. He has very supportive older kids. I have teenagers, so they're not as supportive. They knew I was speaking, and so they sent me a text message that said, "Where's my fishing pole?" So that's how supportive they are, right? They hardly know what's going on. A lot of the topics that you guys have had so far have been really meaty topics, so we're going to try and keep this one fairly light this morning. It is 7 a.m. And just sort of tell you a few stories and hopefully illustrate a few points. As David said, our software company is called Pacesetter, and we're going to get into that about how that software works and why we decided to build it. Really, we're going to cover maybe broader territory than that, hopefully. We're going to talk a little bit about a tax tech stack, what that means, what that is, and more specifically, your tax tech stack, and how tax tools have evolved over time for the tax professional, and what that means for where they're going in the future, and how we can benefit from that as tax professionals. I always like on the airplane when the pilot gets on and says, "Hey, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to take a left by Chicago, and we're going to fly at 30,000 feet." So I'm going to give you sort of an overview of where we're going. First, we're going to talk a little bit about why do firms have a tech stack? Where does that come from? Where does that terminology come from? How has that evolved? Then talk a little bit about, as tax professionals, is there any alternative to that? There are some advantages and disadvantages to dealing with the tech stack. And so as tax professionals, are there any other choices? Or is that all we have? And then a little conversation about, do I have to make a decision between having tools for my practice versus having a good customer experience for my clients? Both of those are important, and talk a little bit about why they're important. And then use that as a springboard to talk a little bit about being a tax preparer versus being a tax advisor. And then at the end, we have a little self-assessment about your software. It's just 40 multiple choice questions. We're going to pass that out and collect it back from you. No, just kidding. It's just a couple questions on a slide to look at and to ask yourself about how does your software help you become a better tax preparer and tax professional. So that's where we're going. So where do we start? Really, I want to start just with the story of our firm and what happened in our firm, and maybe draw some parallels to your firm and where you're at, because I feel like it covered, our story has covered a pretty broad range, and I think that can maybe apply, and we can find some commonalities between where your firm is and where our firm has been and is going. So a little bit about our firm. Our firm started, it started with as a sole practitioner, right? The founder of our firm was an auditor at the IRS for a few years. That was a huge party, as he tells me. It was amazing, the best 4 years of his life. Just kidding. He got a little burnout on that and decided he wanted to help on the other side, right? He had been in enough audits where clients had gotten just hammered because they didn't have a tax professional helping them with their audit. And so he decided he wanted to be on the other side of the table and to help those people through that process. So he left the IRS, started the firm, and when he started the firm, I mean, he's really old. So, no, I'm just kidding. He's standing back there. So when he started the firm, really it started with a filing cabinet, right? And with Excel, and then with the tax software, right? So he had tax preparation software. I think TaxWorks maybe was the name of the software, which is now defunct. It doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if anybody remembers that software. It was great software, but then they just decided like in December of one year, hey, we're not going to do it anymore. So left us in a little bit of a bind. But and it was really about photocopying all the paperwork, saving it, right? Having these stacks and stacks of paper on the desk. And then really for practice management, it was Excel, right? Listing out your clients, their contact information, just having an Excel database. It was pretty small. It's pretty easy to manage, right? As a sole practitioner, you're not thinking, oh man, I've got so many clients to juggle. I don't know who's filed and who hasn't filed. Typically you can use your tax software to manage that. You can use Excel to manage that, and that's reasonable. And you know, maybe you still have a filing cabinet full of paperwork. Maybe you don't. Maybe you've gone electronic, right? And it's all just digital. Hopefully most people have done that at this point. So that's how the practice started as a sole practitioner. As many of you have found, right, if you do a good job and you try to help your clients, you get more clients. And so that's what he found. And as it grew, he brought on the first partner, right? It started to become more tax returns than he could handle. He brought on his first partner. As that happens, you start to ask other questions, right? Which are, can we provide other services? What other things can we do for our clients? How can we expand our business portfolio? And how can we continue to service the clients that we have to build that clientele? So as you do that, right, as you bring two people into an office, that requires you to do something else, which is you now have to manage the schedule of those two people, right? And so oftentimes you'll go out and you'll try to find a solution for that, right? In this day and age, right, I mean, I've listed two here, but there's probably 200 calendaring softwares out there that you could use. So you go out and you search for one, you find one that you kind of like, does what you want it to do, can manage what you want it to manage, and you start using it, right? So now you have the filing cabinet, you've got Excel to manage your clients, you've got some sort of electronic calendar to manage your schedule, and then you still have your tax software, right, which does all the really heavy lifting. And so you're managing your office, you're doing your best, right? It's working, you've pieced it together, the calendar functions in the way you want it to. Maybe there's even some automation in there somewhere. So your clients get notifications of calendar events. And the practice continues to grow. And so as that happens, you start to bring on employees, right? You start to say, okay, well, we have enough work to bring other people into this, so we go out and we try and find good people, right, and bring them in. And so that's what we did. We went out and tried to find good people. We were lucky. We were able to find lots of good people. And as I tell this story, I'm gonna tell it in a very linear fashion. But it is not a linear story. We failed many times. So if you want to ask about those failures, please do. But this is sort of, as we stumbled and fell and grew and progressed, these are sort of some of the things we discovered along the way. So as you bring on more people, as you're supplying more services to your clients, when we started to hire people, this is actually when we made the transition to digital documentation, right? We got everybody's scanner and we started scanning all the documents. Clients love paperwork. They feel like, I don't know if your experience is the same as mine, but clients feel like taxes and papers are inseparable. I have to have papers if I'm going to do a tax return. If I can't hold those papers, we can't do taxes. And so we started scanning everything in and saving it digitally. So we went from a filing cabinet to an electronic filing cabinet, right? And as you do that, again, you can find some digital solutions to that, right? This is one of probably 100 digital solutions to manage your documentation storage, right? They exist, and at this point in the game, most tax softwares have some solution too, right, to manage that documentation. As you have people working for you, now you're in management. And again, I don't know about everybody here, but I didn't go to school to become a manager. And so you start to learn things as you start to manage people. And one of those things is you got to know what they're doing and when they're doing it. So you find something to manage those tasks, right? So that you can assign things to them. You can see that they're being done. They can report back to you that they're getting done, but they don't have to be standing in front of you to do that, right? And so, again, one of many solutions, a calendaring system, you still have to have that. And then maybe you need some sort of inter-office communication, right? So you can communicate with your employees and they can communicate with you even when you're in appointments all day, right? Meeting with clients. And so you find a digital solution for that. In fact, we started with a little something called MSN Messenger. That was a few years ago, right? Maybe some of you remember that. We've progressed on to the cool software, Slack, right? But there's a lot of solutions for that. So you find a solution so you can communicate effectively with those in your office. And maybe at this point, you go from sort of a basic tax software, you decide to upgrade. You think, well, we got enough people working in here. We need a more complete tax software. And so we're gonna step up to something a little bit more expensive that can maybe help us manage all of those people and all those tax returns in our office. And if your experience is anything like ours, you find that that's really great. It does cost you more money, but the tools maybe aren't quite as refined as you would like them to be, or they don't maybe do quite as much as you would like or you anticipated. And so you sort of piece these together. Again, each one of these is its own database, doesn't really communicate with anybody else. It's just sort of off on its own. And you sort of start managing all of those. And sometimes even you might hire people, right? You think, well, I could just hire someone to manage all those databases. So now you're paying someone a salary to just manage those databases and make sure everything's tied together. So again, that continues to grow, right? As you do a good job, we found that the work just comes, right? It's just always there. There's more and more and more. And I think maybe AJ or David pointed out last year, tax season hasn't ended for a couple of years, right? There's always something, ERC, PPP, it changes in the tax law, whatever it is, there's always something else to do. And so these things start to grow and you start to try and fill in the gaps with software, right? And you say, okay, well, I have a problem. In this day and age, I know there's a digital solution to that, so let me just go find it and pull it off the shelf and plug it in to what I'm doing, right? So that I can bridge that gap. So this is sort of the network or the tech stack that we get into. And some of these are just examples, but they're maybe are common to what some of you are doing, right? So you have your tax software in the middle, right? That's critical. You have to have that to prepare tax returns. And then you start to sort of add stuff to it. You add a calendar, you add document storage, maybe you add a digital signature solution. Maybe your tax software has one that it partners with. Maybe you add inter-office communication, task management software. You need to invoice people and get paid. I mean, getting paid is an important part of what we do, right? Maybe the most important thing that we do. So maybe you add some invoicing software. communicating with our clients. I mean, this became everybody's best friend and worst enemy over the last 18 months, right? Is like, I cringe a little bit when people say Zoom. PTSD, I don't know what it is. Is some sort of traumatic experience with it? But it was necessary evil, right? And it worked for many of us. There are other solutions out there, email, text messaging, right? All of these that we use to communicate with our clients, and that gives us this sort of what we call a tech stack, or this sort of spider web effect of supporting digital solutions to our tax software that we have. And that's what I call sort of the digital age version 1, right? So the first digital age for us was when we moved from paper documents to scanning them and keeping them digitally. Version 1.0 was then moving to digital solutions for a lot of the problems that we interfaced with, right? And to be honest with you, we subscribe to these software solutions thinking about ourselves 99% of the time. We didn't really think about our clients, right? We thought about what do we need as a digital solution to solve the problem that we're facing. And so then we found it and we used it, right? So that as our firm grew, that brought up questions about process management, right? Because we had sort of pieced together this digital sort of network of solutions, and we had a growing office, we had to strictly enforce processes during tax season so that everybody followed those, so that we knew what was happening. Otherwise, on our 20-step checklist to bring on a new client, something wouldn't get checked, and that client would say, well, what happened, right? You don't have my address correct. And you're like, well, it's correct in the tax software, but it's just not in the calendar. Like, take it easy, it's okay, right? But they fear that you filed my tax return with someone else's address. You're like, well, we didn't. It's just, it was a communication error. It's all right. It's just a step we missed in our office. So again, you start to walk through a lot of these questions, right? As you're growing, and these are some of the challenges that we faced. Feel free to interject with your own, right? But how do we manage all the client documents? How do we efficiently communicate with all of our clients, right? What's the best way to do that? Do they respond to email or text message or phone call or smoke signal, or what do they need so they actually hear what we're saying, right? Because oftentimes we feel like we've communicated with our clients, and then they say, you never told me that. Like, well, you sat in my office and we had that conversation. Like, how do we get signatures from our clients for tax returns, right? I don't know if anybody's ever waited on a client to sign a document to file a tax return, right? I mean, it's like weeks and weeks. It's now August, and I finished your return before the 15th, and you still haven't signed it. So we're just waiting. That's all we're doing. How do we track down payments for people? Do we e-file the returns before they pay or after they pay? How do we collect that? How do we keep up with the phone calls, right? How do we schedule our appointments for tax season? Do we let them choose? Do we choose? Do we notify them of what we choose? Do we let them be surprised? Like, I mean, there's just so many options of how we do this, right? How do we get missing client documentation? Again, who here has been missing a $10 W-2 for a month and a half, right, from a client? You're like, just please, it'll take 2 minutes to finish your return if you'll just give it to me. So we've all been there, right? So in our office, we really came up with sort of physical processes to move this tax return along in the process and to know where it was at, right? We had desk space dedicated to where it was in the process, so we knew physically where it was. And then what we had to do is we had to say, okay, how do we take that sort of physical process and then digitize that, right? So that we don't have, folder upon folder upon folder and stacks building up to know where things are at, but we can know digitally, right, at a click of a mouse, where everybody's at in the process. And that has been a very big challenge. And these challenges really have sort of led us in the direction that we've gone. So again, is there an alternative to this, or are we stuck with this sort of network for tax professionals? And this is sort of a dumbed down summary of that, right? We need to be able to communicate with clients. We need to be able to communicate in our office. We need to be able to manage tasks, get signatures, receive payments, store documents, and have a calendar. We need that to interface with our tax software so that we can do what we do best, which is prepare tax returns, right? And help our clients. So that's about 2 years ago, that's where we got, is that we said, look, there's all these problems that we need to solve. We need to be able to digitize this very physical process that we have in a more efficient way, because we can't manage a few thousand clients and have to sort of manually look at each client in every database and make sure that it coordinates across those databases and make sure that they're all communicating with each other. We were hiring too many people just to do that, right? And so we made the decision that we just needed to build it ourselves. So we spent time getting our firm in a position where we could spend some time focused on designing the software. We're not computer programmers. We did not program it. Don't think that we did. That would make everyone in this room nervous. We didn't program it. We just designed it, right? And we partnered with some people who did all of the heavy lifting in that regard. So with Pacesetter, this is what I call, patting myself on the back, right? The Digital Age version 2, right? Which is that we have one software that can do all of these things to interface with your tax software. And instead of having the tech spider web or the tech stack, you can really reduce that overhead and that challenge of dealing with all of those software databases. And I'll walk through some of the details of these. There's not enough time to go through all of it, so I won't. But we'll hit some of the high points. So having that one solution so that you can manage all of those things has been critical for our firm to continue to grow. So a little bit about the software itself. Many of you have talked to us over there, so you've seen some of this, so I'll try not to belabor the point. But the software itself can be white labeled, right? We discovered as we made transition, right? I don't know if anybody here has ever transitioned software that their clients see, right? But they're like, oh my gosh, you're changing it again. And you get all this pushback, right? And you're like, hey, we have a portal, it's over here, right? And they say, well, that's great, but I don't know who that is. I know who you are. I trust you. I don't trust these guys, right? So we decided early on that we needed to build white label it. So what your clients are going to see is they're going to see your logo, your name, your information. That's what's going to be there. And so it can become a trusted resource for them without having to jump through the hoops of getting to trust a new software. It's also a very simple login process. Early on when we started this project, we sent a survey to our clients, and at the bottom of that survey, we just gave them the opportunity to just share whatever feedback they wanted to, right? We asked them a few questions, and we said, hey, just let us know what you think of the job we're doing. Well, unsolicited, about 30% of those that responded said, we hate your portal. It is awful. And we're like, really? They're just like, the login process is just so cumbersome. They needed like 6 pieces of information to log into the portal. And they could never remember it. And it had to be this randomized PIN and all these things. And so we thought, hey, we've jumped to the digital age, right? We've got a portal. We're saving our documents electronically. We're doing all these things right. And we get the feedback from our clients, yeah, this is awful. We'd rather just bring the paperwork to your office than have to use this portal, right? So we've simplified that login process. And I'll get to it later, but for your clients, they can even use biometric data to log in, right? So they don't have to remember a password, right? I think all of us carry our fingerprint in our face with us everywhere we go, but maybe not, hopefully. So you can white label it. It has a nice dashboard for your key performance indicators for your office, right? You can get a snapshot of your appointments. You can't really see it all that well on this because it's too far away. But you can see the appointments, you can see tasks, you can set goals for yourself and for your office, and you'll see those progress as you start to achieve those goals. You can track your revenue, your upcoming appointments, tasks, and other things up here, and your revenue. And then you can obviously access the different portions of the software there on the right. But this, for us, we built this out not only to track for us as individual tax preparers where we're at, right? It's always nice to know where you're at in tax season. I mean, on March 1st, for me, when I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know that I can even open my eyes to talk to another client. If I can look and see where I'm at in the process, okay, well, I'm 60% of the way there. I'm almost over that hurdle, right? And so that's really helpful. And to be able to see your tasks at a snapshot and upcoming appointments has been really helpful for us in our office to see. But the other thing that this can be used for is it can be used to track your whole office. So you can track individual preparers, you can track your entire office to manage their performance and where your office is at. So really, the software breaks into two sections, right? Client management and practice management. They're not completely separate. They overlap to some degree, but those are really sort of the two areas that it covers. So you can see here in client management, again, you can't really read it, but up here across the top, you can access all the information about your client, right? You can access all their documents, any tasks associated with that client, any emails they've sent, any chat messages, any appointments, and any invoices. The chat feature has really been huge, and I'll maybe get to that when we talked about the mobile app, but the chat feature has been big for us because the response time has been cut dramatically, right? When we request documentation from people the old-fashioned way, which was by email or phone, it would take us, on average, about 2 weeks to get that data from our clients, right? If we send them a chat message, on average, it's about 2 days to get a response from them, right? It's just so much faster. But this keeps all of the client information in one place, right? Your notes, returns, documentation, everything is in one place. This is the document storage solution as just sort of one example, right? They can easily upload their documentation even from their cell phone. And then you can upload the invoice for the tax return documents, along with their signature page there. It's all housed here in the cloud so that they can access it wherever they're at. So again, outside of April 15th, the January 1st, April 15th, we get a lot of phone calls that say, hey, I'm refinancing a loan. I need a copy of my tax return. Like, well, you were just here 2 weeks ago, and I gave you a copy of your tax return. They're like, oh, well, it's not in my hands right now, so why don't you just send it to me again? So that eliminates that, right? It's very easy for them to access their tax return. And this folder architecture here is customizable, right? So you can actually, as you provide other services to your clients, you can create folders for that in here, and you can dump those documents in there.
Does that client management work with like email programs? Does it grab the emails from the clients out of like Microsoft Outlook or Office 365 or anything like that? Or do you have to do it through your app?
Yeah, so great question. How does this integrate with email services and that sort of thing? So it's import-export through CSV, so an Excel document. So you can pull the information out, you can put the information in. It's typically through that right now. But that's a great point, which is API integration to some of the email softwares out there, yeah. So then on the practice management side, it allows you to, again, to track all your clients. You can track the firm revenue. You can track employees, appointments, goals, tax returns, and you can communicate with your team and your clients through the application itself. This right here is just a screenshot of the status section, which just allows you to, at a snapshot, to see where all of your clients are in the tax preparation process at a glance, right? So you can say, okay, I need to know how many returns are just waiting for documentation. So you can hop in here and you can see, okay, I've got 25 returns that are just waiting for documentation. I've got an hour, let me try to address those, right? I need to find out how many returns have been e-filed rejected, right? I can jump in here and say, okay, I've got 2 rejected returns. I got a few minutes, let me try to address that, right? So you can check the status of your clients here all at a snapshot in one place. And just as I showed before that you can communicate with your clients through the chat feature, you can also communicate with other people in your office through the chat feature as well within the app. So like with Slack or MSN Messenger or anything else that you might use for inter-office communication, this has that built in so you can communicate with other people in your office and with your teams directly through the application itself. So that was a really quick overview of some of the features of it. Really, it's about managing your clients, emails, tasks, chat, calendar, invoicing, documents, and signatures. So you can really manage your tax return and your tax preparation from beginning to end through the software itself. We feel like, being fellow EAs and working through this process and understanding a little bit about the challenges that you face in your office, because we face them in our office, has allowed us to design a software that answers those and addresses those questions. And so that really we feel like gives you the tools to be successful within your practice and continue to allow it to grow, rather than getting to a critical mass where you're like, look, I can't take any more clients. Like I got to give some the boot, right? I think AJ talked about firing some clients and how satisfying that is sometimes, but allowing it to continue to grow. So then the question is, do you have to choose, right, between having the tools you need to prepare tax returns versus having a good client experience, right? Having your clients interact with your digital presence in a way that's a positive experience for them, right? That's a question that up until recently we never asked, right? We just said, is it the tool I need to prepare tax returns? If it is, my clients will just have to deal with it. And then we started to ask the question of, can we get to a position where our clients have a good experience with our digital interface? And so customer experience, right? The customer experience is really important, and in business it's becoming critically important, right? And this is just an example. There's a lot of money in just client experience, right? So we're up in Utah, and so we interact with these guys with some regularity, but it's $1 billion industry, right? All these businesses, that's all they do, is they focus on how your business interacts with your clients, right? You pay me to figure out how your business interacts with your clients, and I'll make it better for you, right? And they've raised billions of dollars just in that, right? So on that same point, so I don't know, how many people in here use an iPhone? How many people use a Google Pixel? We got high fives? High fives? I'm a Google Pixel guy, but there's not many of us, right? I had the Pixel 1 up until like maybe a year and a half ago, right? I love it. I think it's great, but everybody else in my office uses an iPhone. Everybody else in my office uses an iPhone. That's very anecdotal, but this is an example of that, right? I know it, right? The experience of buying a Google Pixel phone versus buying an iPhone is a very different experience, right? For the iPhone, you get to walk into a store, you get to talk to some really cool people who are super hip, right? You get really fancy packaging that it's fun to open, right? And you get that phone. It's an experience, right? Apple has done a really good job of making their products an experience for the customer. Fellow Pixelites, right? You go online, you order it, and it comes in a gray box. It works, but it's a very different experience, right? It's not the same as being able to walk in the store to hold it and feel and be like, oh, this is really amazing, and have somebody walk you through it who's really into tech, right? It's just it's a very different experience. And that, again, I'm not going to claim that that's the whole reason that there's a difference in revenue between these two. It's not the whole reason. But the sales are very different, right? They sell a lot more iPhones, just even here, than they do Google Pixel phones. Why is that? Because they create a great customer experience for their customers. And just in case you're going to tell me, well, they're very different phones, maybe it's just that the Pixel phone is awful. Well, let me show you. This is just some testing that happened, right, to verify. Look, in reality, these two phones are pretty similar phones, right, if we just look at testing. Their performance is pretty similar, but their sales most definitely are not. And so again, just driving home the point that really customer experience is something that the non-tax professional business world is really tapping into, right? They're really focused right now on customer experience. How can I make that experience better for the customers? Because then I'm going to sell more of my product. So this is just a simple graphic that shows, look, if people have a good customer experience, they're going to tell a couple people. If they have a bad customer experience, they're going to tell a lot of people, right? So if you're, right, I think the statistics, I think I have it on here earlier or later, like 1 in 26 will complain about something. The other 25 will just bide their time to do something else, right? So if you get a complaint in your office about something, there are probably 25 other people who are also feeling the same way but haven't said anything about that customer experience. So again, good customer experience, good. Bad customer experience, very, very bad, right? So just a couple of quick statistics, right? Over the next 5 years, this is a sampling of the Fortune 500 companies and what they're going to focus on, right? So are they going to focus on product development? A little bit. Are they going to focus on their price and raising their revenue? A little bit. But really what they're focused on, the Fortune 500 companies, are customer experience. Because they know that if their customers have a good experience, they're going to keep coming back. They're going to keep buying their products, and they're going to keep using them. And that's what we do, right? We sell a product, right? Our product is tax preparation. And our clients need to have a good customer experience, or they're going to tell all their friends how much they hate it. And then there was some research done by the Temkin Group that showed that if you will invest in customer experience, in under 3 years, you can double your revenue. So that's what they found in businesses. This I thought was really interesting, right? So I don't know if any of you in here have ever felt like more work, I need that like I need, I don't know, a broken leg, right? I don't need more work. I've got so much work. What am I going to do with it, right? So maybe a bad customer experience is good for me because I can have a little less work, right? But right here, right, 86% of people buying your product will pay more for what you provide if they enjoy that customer experience. So that means the same amount or less work and more revenue for your office if you can provide a good customer experience for your clients. So I think that's critical, right? Every one of us would love to have less work and more revenue, right? And really the crux of that is your customer's experience with your office. And a big portion of that, becoming an even bigger portion, is what is their interaction with your digital interface, right? Because your clients are going to be interacting with that more and more every year. And that's just becoming more and more of an issue, right? More and more people are focused on it. More and more people are seeing it. So a big portion of the customer experience is managed right here, right, on their phone. Right? Everybody uses their phone all the time, right? 81% own a smartphone and will spend about 4 hours a day on their smartphone. Some of you might be on your smartphone right now. 73% will only use the phone to access the internet by 2025. And I think that's actually going to get there. I think we're actually going to get there a little faster than that. So in a couple of years, your clients will only use their phone to access the internet. And on average, we'll check our phone 47 times a day. For my teenage son, it's more like 470 times a day, because there might be a girl texting him. So your clients are constantly looking at their phone. So if you can communicate with them through their phone, your chances of success are exponentially higher.
Sometimes I get a faster response when I text them than when I email them.
You're always going to get a faster response when you text them than when you email them. I think the average response time for an email is something just under a week. The average response time for a text message is something under 10 minutes, right? So it's always going to be faster. So with that in mind, we designed the client app for Pacesetter. Again, it's white labeled. It's white labeled with your logo, but they can do all the things that they would do on the desktop version on their phone, because we know that that's true, right? They can see their returns. They can help in the processing, right? They can upload documents from their cell phone camera directly into the application. They can pay for their return. They can sign their return. They can view their return. They can do all of that from the cell phone application, right? And as you pointed out, the most important thing is that you can text them through the application, right? So they get a notification, looks just like a text message. They pop into the application, they can reply to it. Again, average response time is dramatically reduced.
When you're talking to texting, are you utilizing your business cell phone strictly, or these personal cell phones? Are there considerations for security breaches, or I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it's not a cell phone, right? So you're texting them through the application. So the security is built into the application.
It's all through there, so they're not getting a hold of a text or a cell phone at all.
Right, they're not going to be calling you at midnight on your personal cell phone, and you're going to throw.
Just worry about security.
Yeah,
too.
sure,
You're set.
sure. It's all within the application. All that data is contained within the application. Yep. So they can schedule an appointment with you through the application if you've set the parameters to be such that they can schedule their own appointment, right? You can set parameters so that they can or cannot, and then what hours can they schedule an appointment, and how close to the current minute can they schedule an appointment. But that can all be done through the mobile application. And we found in our office, again, that it just, the client experience is so much better, right? Because they don't have to remember a password, right? Everybody can sign into their cell phone. They can do it with their thumb, they can do it with their face, they can do it with a pen. Those are things that they don't forget. And that allows them to get into the application itself. That same login process.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Your scheduler,
Yeah.
does it go to your particular port, or do you have one person in your office who does all the scheduling that would get that person? I don't want to schedule all the appointments. I have one person dedicated for that. So can you use user rights, things like that?
Yes. You can direct who's in charge of scheduling, who's going to manage your schedule, whether that's you or that's somebody else. Yes. I hate scheduling. I don't like scheduling appointments either.
How is software interacting with software that you use for tax software?
That's a great question. So, sorry, what was that?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. How does this software interact with tax software? Right? So, let me see. I think I have a slide. Oh, not yet. So, what this does is this reduces your tech stack, right? So now your tech stack is two, right? Your tax software and Pacesetter Tax. So, right now, it integrates like many of the other CRMs do, which is that it doesn't really, right? You have two databases, right? We're in the process of negotiation with several tax software companies to get an API connection, which will allow those databases to communicate. And that's really what we're working on.
Would you be done by the end of the year so that the next season?
Yes, I'll tell you yes. I'm optimistic that we will be, but
They can see your tax return in your software.
yes,
How do you bring the finished product into this?
drag and drop. Right now it's just drag and drop. So again, we talked about that tech stack, that spider web. Really what this does is it makes it 2 data points right now instead of 20 data points. Yep. Okay, so the overarching question is, does your software make you better? Does it make your firm better? Does it make you better? Or is it just a hindrance to getting stuff done?
So, to back up his point a little bit about drag and drop, does the client have to go ahead and set up the app on their phone? And once they do that, are you notified? So if you want to send them that, because you can't put it in their file until they set up, is that correct?
No, you can put it in their file, right? So this will manage those clients and that paperwork regardless of whether they get the application or not. There is also a desktop app that they can use, right? So if they're using a computer, they can use a desktop app that looks very similar to the one you're using. So as soon as you put the client in there, you can start to do whatever you want on that client side. But you're correct, the client's not going to see any of that until they log into it. And so, yes, it's an automated process that notifies them that the portal has been set up for them and that there's a stepwise process to follow to create their profile and to be able to access it and to download the mobile app. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. So again, this is sort of what I was talking about, right? We go from this sort of equation to this sort of equation, right? It's a simplified equation here. And this can allow, so I guess what I'd say is what we found in our office is this allowed us to use maybe a more cost-effective tax software because we had all the tools here, right? And so we weren't trying to piece them together between our tax software and all the other technology that's out there to solve those solutions. And again, all of these other solutions come at a cost. And so we found great savings and be able to just have two of those, right? To have a tax software and then to have that paired with Pacesetter Tax. And really, again, managing that tech stack, it comes at a cost of time, effort, and money. And so critically evaluating where your firm's at and where you're at and how you can improve that process is important as you try to create a better client experience. So this is very similar to the first car that I drove, right? Does it drive? Yes, it does, right? Does it get you from point A to point B? Absolutely, 100% it does. There's a lot of things you got to do in this car to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to, right? Mine, it was the temperature gauge would sometimes go a little too far, right? So you got to monitor that, right? You got to monitor the fuel. You got to monitor the oil. You got to do a lot to this car to make sure that you can get from point A to point B, right? It takes a lot of your attention just to make sure that car is still running, right? And so I think sometimes, at least in our firm, this is our firm. Our firm looks a little bit like this, and it takes a lot of our time and energy and focus just to make sure we're moving down the road, right? Just to make sure that car is going to go from point A to point B, right? Get us from January 15th to April 15th. It takes a lot of focus just to get that done. We spend a lot of time and effort on that. So this is Digital Age 0 or version 1. This over here, right? If you can't see it, this is a Tesla, right? This is a little different, right? It has a little feature called autopilot, right? Which means that it takes a lot less effort to get from point A to point B and to make sure you're still going down the road, right? You don't, sometimes not enough effort. People that get distracted. But what it does is it uses a software solution to get you down the road so you don't have to think about it, right? And I think go ahead.
So back to your point, probably like 20 minutes ago, you said, if a return gets rejected, from what it sounds like right now, someone has to manually go in and say that client's return was rejected. But if you get this software integration, would that e-file center from the XYZ tax software automatically update, like accepted, rejected there? Just so, because it still seems like someone has to be physically entering everything into Pacesetter.
Yes, that's a great question. So the e-file database is a little bit different, right? So the e-file database, you can actually link to it to say rejected, accepted, that sort of, that data point can actually be automated. But the other data points, right, the other data points, you're correct. You have to go in, you'll have to change them. Yep, exactly.
And what software does it work with currently?
So I know currently it works with most of the tax software out there. I'd have to talk to our software guys to know for sure exactly what it integrates with, but I know Drake for sure it does. And I know there are others out there that it does as well. So thank you for that point. So I guess the only point with this slide is just to say, okay, does your software solution require a lot of time and attention, or does it allow you to move down the road and start to think about other things, right? Can you focus on employee training? Can you focus on continuing education? Can you focus on, most importantly, making that transition from tax preparer to tax advisor, right? We all prepare taxes, right? That's what we do. We do tax preparation. But what we really want to do is we want to become a tax advisor. That's, for us, that's what we enjoy doing, right? Is sitting down with the business client, advising them on tax, sitting down with the individual, going through and advising them on what to do. Not only do we enjoy that more, but we also get paid more for that, right? That's a service that we provide to our clients above and beyond just preparing a tax return, right? If our clients come to us just because we can prepare a tax return, oftentimes they won't stick around. But if we can help them and advise them on their tax situation, spend the time with them, then they're going to stick around, they're going to be sticky, right? So again, does our office have autopilot, right? Do we have software solutions that can function independent of us and our focus? So the self-assessment, just a few questions, right? To ask yourself about your firm and about where you're going, right? I think this one's really critical, right? Can your clients interact with you via their cell phone? Because in the next couple of years, that's going to be the only way that they interact with you is through their cell phone. Aside from being in your office, I mean, obviously they'll still come to your office, but digitally, they're just going to communicate with you through their cell phone. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I appreciate it. David, you have a question?
I do. So it looks like this was designed for a multi-location, multi-employee application. How's this going to work for a sole practitioner or somebody with one or two people?
Yep. So I don't know if everybody heard David's question, but he said it looks like it's designed for a huge firm. How does this apply to a sole practitioner? It's built to scale, right? So initially, as you open up the software, it is designed for just one individual in one location. And then you can scale it to multiple locations, multiple individuals. You can build, essentially the software can build out to whatever size or shape your firm has, because it is fully customizable in that way. Yeah. Any other questions? We'll be over here all day. If you see someone in a blue polo, you know they're with us. So feel free to ask us questions. And those are not oranges on the table over there. They look like oranges from here, I know, but they are stress balls. Great for dogs and cats, I've been told. So come by and grab one. And they're great for playing catch if you get really, really tired. You can go out in the lobby and play catch. But again, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. It's been great to be here.